Welcome to part 5. Let's get started. Okay, so now let's start adding some detail to this area right here. We don't need much, and we're going to pull them right from our library. Let's go ahead and pull the dirt patch down. Grab this one. Zoom in on that. Let's increase the size. Let's pull down another dirt patch. We can flip that, transform, right click, transform, flip horizontally. You can make that a little bit bigger. Uniform scale, hold shift. Now we have to remember that we're panning this. So we have to add some detail over on the left-hand side. So we'll hide the foreground rock for right this second. And we can place some more detail on this side. So we'll just grab some more dirt patches. Grab that dirt patch. Right click and transform, flip horizontally. Squeeze it in a little bit so it looks just a little different. It's also a good idea to have things locked. You can accidentally select certain things when you're on the canvas. Let's create a new rock. And we've done this before. You should be very familiar with creating rocks. So we'll create just the base of it. That's perfect. Don't even need to edit that. Make a new layer. Make the top half. We'll change that color to a lighter color. And we'll adjust that just a little bit. And that's perfect. We can actually, let's group that together. We'll call it rock. We'll add that to our library. We'll bring that same rock back onto the canvas. We'll flip it by going to right-clicking, transform, and flip horizontally. And we'll shrink it. And there we go. It looks great. Let's add that same rock right here. And we can squeeze it just to make it look a little different. I'll let you in a little designer secret. When you want something to look like ground or dirt, you can add just little specks. And that's what we're going to do. So we can add these specks with the pencil tool. And we'll change it to a darker color. They can be very sporadic. They don't have to be any specific shape. Just not too big. You're just looking to put some like detailing. They really can add that extra level of detail just by adding a small speck. So it looks pretty good. Let's drag out a few more dirt patches. Let's make that one a little bit bigger. Okay, so now what we got to keep in mind is that all these front foreground elements are going to be animated faster than the elements behind them and the mountains and the bones. That means we have to make this a lot longer. So we have to put more detail into this empty space because it's going to be panning across the canvas. So we'll just drag some more dirt patches out. We'll make this little cactus look like some grass just by changing the color. Let's zoom out just a little bit. Now, since all of these objects are going to be animated at the same rate because they're fairly close to the camera, let's group them together. So we're going to select all of those. Right click and group. So now we can name that group foreground elements. And let's go ahead and click inside of there. Now it's isolated. Now we have a little bit more room to work. And we can add some more detailing. So we'll just continue to drag. Some elements from our library, and we'll create some new. Let's create a few new rocks. Go ahead and make a new layer. Select that pen tool. Create that base of the rock. We can change that color to the darker. Now we need to make a top for that. So we can create a new layer. Let's change this color to the lighter color. Let's go with one of the gradients we have. There we go. That's good. Place it on top. There we go. There's another rock. Now we can group that rock together. Name it rock 2. Place it in our library. And now we can drag it back out. Make it a little bit smaller. And place it right there. Let's grab that rock. Place it on stage. We can go in. Scale it a little bit more. And place it in front of that one. Let's create another pencil layer. Now this is the layer with all little specks of dirt. That's all we're doing is adding specks. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I do not think that's going to be long enough. So I'm going to show you a trick. We're going to add this group to the library. And there it is. I'm going to go back into that group. And we're going to drag the group within itself. And there we go. It is twice as long now. So let's take a look at what that looks like in the scene. So now we can animate that group of foreground elements. So let's unhide that foreground rock. Now these elements are going to have to move a little slower than that foreground rock with the lizard on it, and a little faster than those bones. Now these foreground elements are going to have to be animated almost at the same rate as that foreground rock with the lizard on it. Select our foreground elements, put the scrubber at 10, and then just animate those across the screen. Now let's take a look how that looks. As I scrub through it, it looks pretty decent. Let's preview that animation. Let's zoom in. And it's looking pretty good. So let's bring our player to the front. So now that our panning background is pretty much complete, I see some things I'd like to tweak. There's a cactus in the background that's moving too fast. It looks to me like those detailed rock formations are moving a little bit too fast. Let's lock that foreground elements layer. Let's hide everything but what I want to work with. So we'll just unhide all of these. And there we go. We'll select that Mountains 2 layer. We'll go to the drop down and we'll locate that problem cactus. And I believe Yep, it's this one right here. So all we have to do is, since this is just a 10-second animation, I'm just going to drag his last keyframe further out. We're never going to see that animation, so he is good to go. So we can preview this. And that looks much better. So let's fix those problem mountains. So we need to look at all of these to adjust those detailed rock formations. So I want to make them go a little bit slower. And they're right here, so we'll lock everything else and unlock those mountains. Now what I want to do is I want to extend it. I want it to take longer for those mountains to go across the canvas. So we'll select this keyframe and we'll drag it out further. Let's scrub through. I think they need to go a little bit slower. So we'll drag it out another second. That looks much better. So let's preview this. Let's adjust that first frame position. We can push it back so we can see a little bit more of that final artwork. So let's preview that. Everything looks great. For the final touch, I'm going to add a few more shadows like this cactus has right here. So I'm not going to do it for everything. I'm going to do it for a few things here and there. But feel free, in your backgrounds, you can add as many shadows or as many details as you'd like. So let's go right into the bones. I'm simply going to go right into that group. I'm going to create a layer and drag it all the way at the bottom. We're going to name that layer shadow. And I'm simply going to take that pen tool and create shadow. Now that looks pretty good. We'll create one for each individual rib. And still using the pen tool, create our shapes. And again, I'm just creating these nodes where I need them. This is not going to be the final shape. I'm going to go in and edit those just like we edited the rocks and every other element in this scene. So let's go in. And start to form these shadows. So we'll pull that in closer. We'll pull this out. And we'll do the same with this last one. Pull that in. Pull these out. We'll add a bend. We'll add a slight bend to this one. And last but not least, we will create a bend. And drag that in close. Fix this bottom one, and let's see what that looks like on the canvas. Oh, it's a little dark, and those shadows need to be rotated just a little bit. So we can click right back into that. We'll use the selection tool, and we will rotate those just slightly. Rotate this just slightly. It looks like. It looks better. Change the opacity level of those shadows. Clicking in, just going to the fill, and just adjusting those opacity. We'll bring them down to 50%. And we'll do the same for each one of the rib shadows. And let's take a look. That looks great. That looks really good. But it looks to me like that one cactus's shadow was a little bit too dark. So we're gonna click into him. We're gonna click into that and adjust that shadow. So we want that to be about 50%. And that rock shadow. And let's go back to the scene. And looks great. Now let's give our car a shadow. We'll click into that group, and we will create a new layer. We'll drag that to the bottom. We'll call it shadow. And all we really need to do is actually use the rectangle tool and just create a slight rectangle underneath the car. We can change the color, and we can edit it to be on a slight skew. And then we can change the opacity of that to about 35%. And let's see what it looks like on the stage. That looks great. You can literally go in and add shadows for every element in this project. You can go in and add shadows or more detail or even more animation in your scene. But as for this one, it's looking pretty good. Okay, so one of the last things I'm going to show you is fading to black. We're going to create a new layer. Going to name it Fade to Black. And we're going to pick the rectangle tool and drag a rectangle over the whole size of the canvas. We can lock all the other layers because we just want to work with this fade to black. We're going to scrub to frame 10. We're going to throw a keyframe in. And then we're going to change the opacity level up here to 0. And we will throw a keyframe in about 9.5. Let's extend this a little bit. Let's just extend it just a little bit so I can see. There we go. And we will change the opacity on that keyframe to 0. So now we have a nice fade to black. Instead of our animation just cutting short or cutting off, it'll fade. So now that we're done with this project, we can go to that camera layer, or dummy camera layer, and delete it. We do not need it anymore, so we can just delete it. So let's preview this one last time to see if there's any jarring things we need to fix, and then we can go ahead and publish it. So let's take a look. Everything looks great. Now there's two ways you can publish your video. You can go to this upper left-hand corner of the Animatron drop-down menu, go to Project and Publish, and by default it will publish in HTML5. Or you can go to this upper right-hand corner and click that setting, and you have the option of publishing HTML5, GIF, or a video. It's pretty self-explanatory. Let's just publish it in HTML5 because that's going to be the quickest. And there we go. It's done. All we have to do is open it. It gives you the embed code, so you can embed it in your blog or your website. And we'll open it up. And there it is. And that brings us to the end of our tutorial. I hoped you enjoyed creating our background, and I will see you next time.